following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
And welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the High Low Sports Podcast. We appreciate you all joining us here on this Wednesday evening, or if you're checking us out later on from one of your favorite podcast apps, we appreciate that as well, too. Always a fun time this time of year. It's very busy. NBA playoffs around the corner. Baseballs are about to start. And everyone's favorite, the NFL offseason specifically, it is now draft season. It is DJ, joined as always by my co-host, Kelcey. Kelcey, pro days are about underway now. We do got the combine wrapped up. Speculation season is underway. Free agency is underway. Money's being thrown around as well, too. The rumor mills are wilding. So we're going to take advantage of some of those today.
Yeah, no, I can't think of it. I think I've said this every week since the offseason has started. This is the time where we cover football the most, and it is one of the more fun times we get to do because we can speculate as much as we want, and the worst that we're going to hear from anybody is, that's a dumb pick, or that's a dumb way to say things. But the truth is, nobody knows what the actual truth is going to end up being. And half the time, well, actually, a little bit closer to 65 to 70% of the time, we're actually more correct than the people on TV are. So I don't feel bad about any of my outlandish picks anymore because they've been proven right more often than not the last couple of years. So I you know what? We can just have fun, be speculative, and do it. Say whatever crazy thing comes to my mind.
Well, if anyone wants to do an accountability check on us, go right ahead as well, too. I will take all the smoke. I am here for it as well, because I know some of those have been right, though. So I will stand by those ones that are right, and I will deal with the ones that are wrong. Like, I actually thought Zach Wilson was a top 10 prospect in that draft. Actually, number 11 to be exact. I was wrong, clearly. But that is neither here nor there, because I am not the worst egregious follower of that take as well, too, considering some people had him number 1. So you can go, that one was a mess. But you know what?
Just flash back to my Trey Lance commentary. That's all I got to say.
Trey Lance at 32 on that big board as well. So we have no idea if that's right or wrong, because he has played 32 snaps. But I digress as well. So today it is mock draft part 1. If you guys don't remember from last year, we're going to alternate picks. So I'm going to take the odds. Kelcey is going to take the evens. This year we decided to throw a little bit of seasoning onto this one, and we're going to include some trades this year as well, too. So maybe he screws me over. Maybe I screw him over. Maybe we screw everybody over. We don't know we don't exactly have this planned out so well. So we're going to tackle this from top to bottom, 1 through 31. Due to the forfeiture of the pick, as well as you see the current draft order at the time of this recording. Carolina just recently jumping up to number 1 overall, and already they're talking about trying to trade back now as well, too. So what's going on in Carolina? Who has it? I have no idea. Maybe between the time that this airs and by the time we record and the time it airs, maybe it ends up being a situation where they've already traded back. But we're going to roll with what we have right now. So on the clock,
and it's worth mentioning. Well, I'll say before we get started, it's worth mentioning. The 13th pick is still currently the New York Jets pick. However, we're projecting Aaron Rodgers confirming a trade to the Jets here shortly, and that probably being the pick involved with the trade. So we're just going to go ahead and give that to the Packers and let them have the 13th and the 15th pick for now. And we'll kind of, hey, if we're wrong, we're wrong. So be it.
We'll definitely cross that bridge when we get there. But by all accounts, it sounds like Aaron might be heading to the Big Apple as well. So we're going to roll with that for now. But starting now at pick number 1, Carolina Panthers are on the clock. I'll be taking the odds. Kelcey will be taking the even. So Carolina Panthers talks about trading back. They like multiple quarterbacks. They just wanted to get up here to get in position to trade back. I don't think they're going to trade back, though. I don't think anyone's going to be willing to trade up with them. I think they're just going to have to deal with everything they got rid of. And I think they're going to take a quarterback, and I'm taking C.J. Stroud off the board, the quarterback from Ohio State, number 1 overall. Accuracy, precision, size, underrated mobility, a perfect fit for a Frank Reich offense. And at the same time, their quarterback coach, Josh McCown, he did a breakdown on Underdog Fantasy for him. He was fawning over C.J. Stroud, who at the point of this recording, obviously you and I still have Bryce Young as 1A, but I think C.J. Stroud has made himself 1B as far as a prospect. This is pre-pro day as well, too, but there's not a lot of weaknesses in C.J. Stroud's game, and I think it's a perfect fit situation. Maybe better if they had DJ Moore, but I think if you trade up this far, you have to see somebody you believe in, and I'm gonna say they go with C.J. Stroud on this one. Not a whole lot to. There's not as much uncoachable things to nitpick with him. Like you can't make Bryce Young 220 pounds feel more comfortable. You can't. Those little things like that. So give me C.J. Stroud going number 1 overall.
I gotta say, like you said, we both kind of have Bryce Young as 1A, but I see what you're saying with quarterback coach obviously fawning over a certain quarterback, and they have the opportunity to take whoever they want. We saw that with Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray, even though they had Josh Rosen in the team. So definitely wouldn't be surprised to see C.J. Stroud So I'm just going to go ahead and jump straight into pick number 2 here. Because if I'm the Houston Texans and I just see CJ Stroud off the board, I might be celebrating a little bit here. Because I get a guy that, and a new head coach, who, by the way, is from the University of Alabama, who has a receiver coming back, who is one of the best receivers from Alabama in the recent years, who teamed up with, well, the guy that might be that is on the board still. I'm taking Bryce Young. I think here with Houston, I'm going Bryce Young. They need a quarterback. I think Davis Mills. I personally don't think it's time to go and set sail on the Davis Mills train. But look, the numbers speak for themselves. I'm not going to deny that. When you have the opportunity to get Bryce Young versus Davis Mills, the answer is very simple. You go Bryce Young. I don't mind his size. His size doesn't bother me. Obviously, there are some more things that Houston needs to address. But with this opportunity, sitting here at number 2, CJ Stroud's off the board, and you have the chance to get Bryce Young. Honestly, you're a win-win whether Carolina took Bryce Young or Carolina took CJ. So you kind of feel okay with either option. So I'm going Bryce Young with number 2.
Very interesting that we both had CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, 1 and 2 off the board. Either way, it felt like as well, too, regardless of who did odds or evens. Neither one of us had Anthony Richardson going here, which there's a lot of speculation. The Panthers might have traded up to get him as well, too. And if that's the case, I think we're going to see some mixes up coming up here in a little bit as well.
Pro Day is going to tell me a lot. And again, we're doing this before Pro Day, before the Pro Days are run. So we, again, I'm be honest, I'd say Pro Day is going to might change a lot for me. Anthony Richardson might continue to show out, but I've saw so much bad from Anthony Richardson over the years in Florida. It's hard to forget that. And where I've seen so much greatness from somebody like Bryce Young and somebody like CJ Stroud over the last few years. So when you see the tapes and then what they did during the combine or didn't do during the combine in Bryce Young's case, it's just kind of one of those situations where I have to wait for Pro Day. Pro Day will decide a lot for me here, but I do think you're right. Like Anthony Richardson not going off the board here, some people might find egregious.
Absolutely. That's going to take us now to pick number 3, the Arizona Cardinals. And the draft is officially underway because we got ourselves a trade here, ladies and gentlemen. As I got the Atlanta Falcons trading up from pick number 8 to pick number 3, throwing in some other compensation there as well, too. We won't get too much into that since we're just doing the first round. But now at pick number 3, the Atlanta Falcons are officially on the clock. And we talked about Anthony Richardson. You know what? This is where I think we're going to see him go. I think the Atlanta Falcons are going to trade up. I think they came up here to get Anthony Richardson. I think they're going to look at it. They're going to say, we need to get ourselves a quarterback long-term. It depends on what their thoughts are on Desmond Ridder, but by all account purposes, I think they're looking to get their guy. And I think this is what they'll trade up. The combines, the pro days, everything adds up here. Anthony Richardson, you, my friend, are an Atlanta Falcons. Quarterbacks go 1, 2, and 3 off the board to start this draft.
Wow. I got to be honest. I wasn't expecting that at all. And that makes what's about to happen here in a moment a little crazier here. Yeah, I got to be honest. I wasn't expecting the Falcons to trade up considering they're out on the sweepstakes for Lamar Jackson, considering they seem to be happy with Desmond Ridder. So I got to say, surprised that they switch it up and go up and get Anthony Richardson. However, I will say, given their offensive coordinator, given their head coach and / offensive coordinator, given the rest of their team, I don't mind the Anthony Richardson pick. I think that's a very interesting pick, and we all know Atlanta has success with mobile quarterbacks over the years. So,
and you throw in Kyle Pitts and Drake London. That's a big catch, 2 guys with a huge catch radius. I think will help things out from a little bit. I think they just kind of go all in at this point as well too. And they don't want to risk them both being gone by pick 8, so by pick 7 or 8. So I think here they plunge. If they go 2 feet, 1 face, 2 arms into it, and they just go all in on the ultimate potential quarterback of this draft. 21 years old, every physical tool you could imagine. Called himself Cam Jackson at one point, so I think they try and replicate a little bit of that as well. So quarterbacks 1, 2, 3 yet again, and there's still some stuff to be. There's still a lot to do.
Well, all right, that's going to take us to pick 4. And I got to say, speaking of Lamar Jackson, then you just said the draft is underway with the last trade. Well, we get another one here pre-draft. I do have Lamar Jackson going to the Colts and the Ravens getting pick number 4. Obviously, there's probably going to be a whole lot more involved here, likely next year's pick as well that could evolve into a first-rounder. Probably going to be a second-rounder at first. They're going to get the second round for this year, probably a 4th round as well. The Colts might get a 7th round back or something like that in this conversation. But I have the Ravens there moving themselves up here, getting onto the board. And look, Anthony Richardson's off the board. You don't have a quarterback for next year. You probably don't feel too comfortable with Pro Bowler Tyler Huntley. Well, guess what? Will Levis is still sitting right there. I do have them taking Will Levis off the clock. I have him going all 4 quarterbacks right off the board, the first 4 opportunities, and that could throw some wrench into a whole lot of people. I honestly had them sneaking up here, maybe getting Anthony Richardson, but as you mentioned in the leadoff, we might screw each other over with some of these trades. So it got me on that one. I'll be honest, that was a surprise. I respect it though. I like the pick, but Lamar goes to the Colts. Baltimore Ravens then looking for a quarterback to get them into the next step, and I think Will Levis is that guy. Going to give him an opportunity. So we'll see how that goes and through the rest of this draft, because it's going to be, pretty interesting going forward. So pick number 5, DJ, sitting with the Seattle Seahawks. What do you have happening?
This is where it continues to get a little bit interesting. So now the Seahawks, the playoff team Seahawks that just re-signed their quarterback have their selection of the entire board at their disposal. Question is, what do they feel is a big need? And this is tough because there's a lot that can help them while also being a really good team. But I'm not going to overthink the wheel here. I'm going to just take Will Anderson right out of the gate. You have the best player in the draft sitting there coming off the edge. I know Jalen Carter makes a little bit more sense for them at the middle, but I think with the way Pete Carroll's kind of talked about, I'm going to, just with everything going wrong with Jalen Carter, I'm going to take Will Anderson here because you can't go wrong with either one. Will Anderson just has that one less thing to worry about. So give me the best player in the draft going to the playoff-bound Seahawks.
Yeah, I love that pick. And the way this draft has panned out, if you're Seattle sitting at 5 and you get Will Anderson falling into your lap right here, it's going to be a hard thing to be like, I don't want him. No, you sprint, you run, you accelerate yourself to the to wherever you have to run to get this pick in there. I don't think there should be a second question here. I love the pick here.
And you have another first-round pick, so you don't need to trade around. You already still have picks thanks to the Russell Wilson trade. So it's like, you know what? Just take the best player and let's ride.
Exactly. Well, speaking of a team with a extra pick here in the first round because of a trade, that is the Detroit Lions moving in at number 6. And like the Seahawks, there's a whole lot of things to pick from here. And actually probably a player they didn't expect to have an opportunity to go get. But that might still be sitting there. And depending on how everything shakes out legally with him, we'll have to wait and see. But I have Jalen Carter here going to the Detroit Lions. Because at the end of the day, he is still the second best defensive lineman here in the board. I don't think there's any way that Dan Campbell can overlook this. Depending on how the legal situation pans itself out. He's obviously going through all of that. But if that plays it out in his favor of Jalen Carter somehow, then this pick right here is going to be a Jalen Carter pick in my eyes to Detroit. I just don't think there's any other way around that.
Absolutely. I mean, to Dan Campbell seems like the type of coach that if there is any concerns, he's a guy you'd trust to handle it as well too. So that's really good pick. And the Lions starting to take over the North with a top 5 pick and nearly being a playoff team as well too. That it's not the same old song and dance lines as well. And there's no quarterback temptation, seeing as how they're all gone. So they have plenty of options here now. So it's going to move us on now to the Raiders with the next pick at pick number 7. And they're disappointed. They were probably hoping to go get one of those quarterbacks as well too. But the way the draft board shook out, it looks like they're going to have to roll with whether it's a Jimmy G or whoever they pick up in the offseason, something along those lines.
Mac Jones, potentially.
That'd be something as well too. But I think they're going to not overthink this one. I think it's going to be a non-traditional Raiders-esque pick where they go with like pure speed or pure measurable. I think they're going to actually do the opposite. Give me Peter Skoronski, the offensive lineman from Northwestern. They need to protect the quarterback. That was one of their big things last year. They freed up a lot of cap space moving Max Jones's money around. Josh McDaniels knows the importance of an offensive line. You have the league's leading rusher and one of the top 5 receivers and receiving yards, and one of the best pass rushers. You have a lot of holes, but you have some stud players, so you need to fill in those spots with a guy like Skoronski. Plug him in any 4 or 5 spots, really all 5 spots, and you'll feel pretty comfortable. So get that line going and undo the Alex Leatherwood draft selection, if that makes sense, where they went with freakish potential, but a lot of holding and false starts. Now you went with basically the sure thing, even though he might not be Trent Williams. He's at least a solid contributor somewhere.
All right. I like it. I think Peter Skoronski would be the smart pick here for Vegas, but I don't know if they're, with Josh McDaniel, I feel like they should take the safe pick there, especially since you don't know who's going to play quarterback for you going forward. Will it be Stidham? Will it be somebody that you bring in? Who knows? So I definitely don't hate Skoronski. I do love him as the number 1 overall tackle here. And him going to Vegas, I think is the only positive for Vegas. I do think, though, again, if you're the Raiders, you're kind of looking at the rest of this board. You're like, man, there's a lot of athletes out there. And, the old Raiders mantra of athletes starts to sneak into the back of their heads. But I think Josh McDaniels will keep a cool head, like you said, and probably go and should go offensive tackle here with Skoronski. So definitely like that pick. But that'll take us into the newly minted number 8 pick, and that's the Arizona Cardinals. As we just talked about, the Cardinals trading with the Falcons. And this, I gotta say, this kind of threw a little wrench in my system here. I didn't know, where it was going to come, but obviously Anthony Richardson to Atlanta at the number 3 pick. They have Arizona now here at the number 8 pick, and Arizona has a lot of stuff they need to fill in the trenches. But with Skoronski just going ahead of them, I do think this is where they just pull the trigger and say, forget it. I'm going to go with the guy that's been the most impressive offensive lineman in the combine, and that's going to be Darnell Wright out of Tennessee. I actually have Darnell Wright sliding ahead of Paris Johnson Jr. here because Paris Johnson hadn't looked good so far, didn't really test well in the few tests that he did do. And then, you have Darnell Wright looked smooth, complete, everything, efficient for this Cardinals, this new head coaching staff here for Arizona as well. So I do think they're going to go Darnell Wright here out of Tennessee. Kind of the first, I'd say, upset pick as far as what we've had so far, as far as not really maybe the top guy at that position in a lot of people's eyes.
Very interesting as well, too. And I think testing-wise, he is definitely climbing. Some places have him as like offensive tackle 4 through 5. Some of them have him in the top 2 or 3. So I think he could be a definite climber in these next few weeks leading up. And he could be that one that everyone's like, oh, we expected maybe the 30s early second round. And Arizona's like, we're not wasting any time. We're keeping – whenever Kyler comes back, we're going to keep him alive. That's our goal. So I like it. A big mauling body and a heavy pass offense is what he's coming from, too. So you got to trust him in those passing situations.
Love to spread out. Like, he's great in a spread type of system too, which when you have Kyler, you kind of need that system as well. Also not the biggest tackle. So when you talk about Kyler Murray as your quarterback, kind of a helpful situation as far as height wise goes. He is not the tallest guy out there, but I do think this is one of those situations. Like, I personally, before the combine, I really didn't have him. I had him like 5 in the tackle rankings, but seeing what he did in the combine kind of pushed him up the board for me. Obviously, again, pro day could change that again, but I think so far he's climbed the ranks. He impressed me enough in the combine that I'm going to take him here number 2 overall tackle.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's going to take us now to the Chicago Bears, now sitting at number 9, who in a few mock drafts I've done, I had them even popping back up a little bit, but for this one, we're going to have them staying put. I think they're getting DJ Moore. Your receiver spot is pretty well locked down. I think free agency, they're going to be very active, especially on the offensive line. There's rumors that Ryan Kelly, the center, might be available. There's plenty of good offensive linemen in free agency, so I think they're going to address that. I think defense is what they're going to attack a lot in this draft. And I look at Tyree Wilson, the edge from Texas Tech, hanging out there number 9. The guy a lot of people have talked about could go number 5 to Seattle as well, too. There's talk he could be in that, obviously, Will Anderson's edge 1 to just about everybody. Tyree Wilson's basically firmly almost locked into that edge 2 for a lot of people as well. So if you can get him at 9, a guy you might have taken at 4 or 5 if you took one of those other trades, that's a pretty good pick for the Bears. And you have those extra picks to fill it out as well. So arguably the best player on the board and a position of need, check and check.
Yeah. No, I love this pick. I think this is one that I honestly thought about it, at number 6, potentially taking him instead of Jalen Carter. And again, that might be the case that Detroit might take Tyree at 6 instead of taking Jalen Carter. Again, just depending on how comfortable they are with all that situation happening or if things come out. So yeah, I love this Tyree Wilson pick. A guy that's been really, again, talk about board climbers. He's been climbing a lot of boards, especially in this offseason, been answering questions so perfectly. And then the more you go back and watch his tape, the more you find the small things that you end up liking about him. And he also has the athleticism to kind of cover up the smaller mistakes that he makes that at the next level that maybe he won't get away with, but at the same time can do enough to get away with it, just enough, if you will.
Exactly. And one thing you really like to see from basically trench players as well, too, especially defensive linemen, is you like to see the wingspan. And he has a wingspan of, let me just make sure I get this number correct here as well, too, 86 inches, which for fight fans, that is a longer reach than John. That's a longer wingspan than John Jones. So yeah, I like a good luck getting your hands on him, offensive lineman. If nothing else, he has some things you can't teach. So Tyree Wilson, I think he might even go higher than this, but if he's sitting there at 9, the Bears are like, well, this worked out. We would have taken him at 4.
Yeah, exactly. No, I really do like this pick a lot. But that's going to take us to the number 10 pick here, and that is the runners-up here this last season, the Philadelphia Eagles, getting this pick through New Orleans. And look, they got a couple needs here that might open up here on the defensive line. But seeing Tyree Wilson go off the board, you're just kind of like, all right, well, I don't feel as comfortable with that. And looking across the rest of the board, of maybe something that you might need and something that kind of got exposed in the Super Bowl is James Bradberry. You might need to find that replacement for Mr. Bradberry. And there just so happens to be the guy that had an exceptional combine out of Oregon and Christian Gonzalez sitting there. And I think number 10 right here, Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon, slides to the Philadelphia Eagles. And now you have Darius Slay, James Bradberry, Christian Gonzalez. Obviously, Bradberry might stick around, might not. We'll see. But you have a young, talented, fast, we just learned, corner in Christian Gonzalez, who is a big body. And you have Darius Slay there, who is literally the exact same as Christian Gonzalez coming out of college after we found out his results. And you're going to tell him, hey, just watch what Slay does and go do that on the other side. So if you're an Eagles fan, you love this opportunity. And again, this is just the way the draft shook out. The Christian Gonzalez here ends up at number 10.
I like that pick. I'm a huge Christian Gonzalez guy. Right now, I have him as CB1B for the rankings. There's a lot to work with there, but seeing Christian Gonzalez go off at number 10, I think that's going to take us now to pick number 11 with the Tennessee Titans. And you know what? It's about that time again. It's been a few minutes. We got ourselves another trade here. As I see Pittsburgh trading up, and we know in the Mike Tomlin era, they have been aggressive for players that they want, trading a first for Minkah Fitzpatrick, trading to go get players that they want. They don't think twice about it. So they're going to climb up to number 11. Tennessee's going to trade back as they look to be in a pretty clear rebuilding, or at least retooling to rebuild mode, letting a lot of veterans go, clearing cap space, that sort of thing. And I think here they get some extra picks. Steelers trade up, and we talked about it last year with Kenny Pickett, the Pittsburgh guy, keeping him at home. It just kind of felt right. Well, they're going to double down on that this year. They're going to go homegrown Joey Porter Jr. They're going to trade up to go get an outside corner to add on to that defense as well. Joey Porter's a guy you're very high on as well, and I think a lot of people really are. A fantastic corner. Can play inside, can play outside. Not a whole lot of holes in his game. Very, very physical, as you'd imagine, being Joey Porter's son, and very good in coverage. So I think they trade up, they get their guy, and they continue to fortify the defense because they're going to get all pro level receivers in like the 5th round. It's just what they do. Offensive linemen, I think the ones they wanted would probably already be gone by now. So I think they're willing to just go get a playmaker to add with Minkah Fitzpatrick, TJ Watt in that defense. Because in that division, with Joe Burrow, Deshaun Watson, we don't have it being Lamar Jackson, but if he is still there, you got to get some stops. You got to try and find a way to get some stops. So I think they go with Joey Porter to get some takeaways.
I don't hate that at all by any means. And I'd even add in, I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of slot him into the box there as that sort of like big body. And we've talked about this before with Joey Porter. He is a bigger body guy. So you could easily slot him in as that slot type of corner, let him handle anybody or any tight ends that you face, which in their division, you might have to worry about a couple of them here and there. David Njoku being number 1. That you probably have to worry about. Mark Andrews, more likely Mark Andrews being number 1, depending on what the quarterback situation is. And then David Njoku being number 2. But yeah, you definitely need a guy like Joey Porter Jr. to slide in there. And I do love the idea of moving up here. I am kind of surprised there's another guy out there I thought maybe might go ahead of Joey Porter. But I you know what? Again, I'm a big Joey Porter Jr. fan, so don't mind this in the least whatsoever, him going to Pittsburgh. I think that's a very, very interesting pick here, especially with them trading up to get him.
Absolutely. Mike Tomlin loves to go get his guys regardless. He does not think twice about it, doesn't care what anyone else says. He will go find his guys. He's done that his whole time, and it's worked pretty well.
Exactly. But that'll take us to number 12 here, and it's the Houston Texans getting this pick, well, by the way, from a Cleveland team who still, we just mentioned, does not have a number 1 pick, first-round pick here. So the Texans on the clock, they just took Bryce Young. What better to go with Bryce Young than maybe an offensive lineman to protect him here? And the last offensive lineman off the board, you had Darnell Wright. But that left a lot of guys there sitting there that are pretty talented. And I'm going to say Paris Johnson Jr. here slides right into the Texans' wheelhouse. They love him, and he will just fit perfectly with their team. I do think he's the guy that'll help make Bryce Young's life a little bit easier as well, considering you're not sure about the health of some of your offensive linemen for the Texans. This is going to be one that hopefully Paris Johnson, who, by the way, I think only missed 2 games in his career at Ohio State, will just slot in and just Iron Man it out. So give me Paris Johnson Jr. here to the Texans at number 12.
Put him opposite Laramie Tunzel, and your quarterback with Bryce Young, he feels a lot more comfortable there. Maybe even more so than he felt at Alabama with how their offensive line was performing last year. So you got 2 bookend tackles. You're feeling pretty good in Houston with your new quarterback. He feels a lot safer as well, too. And Damian Pierce is going to like those outside zones with those 2 on the edge. So I like that.
Gonna love it.
That's going to take us now to pick number 13. And this is now the Packers on the clock, courtesy of the Jets. And funny part is, I had this pick player is going to the Jets or the Packers. It's the same way. It doesn't matter who's taking them. It was initially Paris Johnson for me, but since he is gone, you go right down the list and you go with Broderick Jones, the big offensive lineman out of Georgia. As you mentioned, the Jets and the Packers both could use an offensive lineman. The Packers, you have your young quarterback. You want to keep him upright. You have the young receivers, let them kind of mold together. Why not just fortify, make sure he's up and healthy? Could probably start on the right side opposite David Bakhtiari. If David Bakhtiari comes back healthy, we'll see what goes on there. But keep that running game strong. Keep your own quarterback protected. Broderick Jones with the first of 2 Packers first-round picks. Or if the Jets are still here, they're still taking the offensive lineman. So either way, Broderick Jones or Paris Johnson's going right here for him.
Yeah, I think this is the perfect pick here for the Packers at this spot. At 13, or whether it be the Jets here picking Broderick Jones, I think that just makes sense to take that offensive lineman. I mean, you really do need him. There are no questions that you need him from either team. You got what? Bakhtiari retirement. Yeah, all the other injuries. Like, you need something out there. And then for the Jets, just you're a couple pieces away. Like, you are a couple pieces away, and that tackle, that combo tackle type of player is probably top of the list for you. So by all means, I do think that's the way they go here. I do like that pick a lot. So that'll take us to those stubborn Sith Vaders, if you will, the New England Patriots. What will the Magic Man, the Sith Lord himself, Bill Belichick, come up with here with the New England Patriots? There's a lot of they have a lot of holes to fill. They can go offense here with running back, wide receiver. You can go offensive line. You can put it on the defensive line as well. And that's where I'm going here. I'm going an edge rusher. Could be a combo edge rusher, outside linebacker for this Patriots team, and a guy that just showed his freakish talent and he's shown in his career he can slide in and out of multiple positions. Going Nolan Smith from Georgia here to New England. It was tough though, because I really, really thought maybe they take a running back. But I had to hesitate before I did it. And so I think Nolan Smith is what Bill Belichick wants, and he wants to get that defense back in prime. So this is where I think Nolan Smith goes.
A pretty good defense last year. You add in Nolan Smith, who, in my opinion, was a top 10 player coming into the year. Unfortunately, the injuries kind of derailed that a little bit, but then you saw what he did at the combine. I think if he's there at 14 in this area too, Bill Belichick's like, oh, okay, a 4-3 edge that I can throw all over the place. I can rush him from a safety spot probably if I want to. Yes, please, because you know how much Bill loves just get plug and play. He loves players, not positions, basically. Nolan Smith, I think, can epitomize a lot of that. And good luck with these mobile quarterbacks in space. Nolan Smith, we saw him track down Bryce Young in that national championship game like it was nothing. He's going to feel comfortable with a lot of these AFC quarterbacks in space. I like this pick a lot. It's kind of like we talk about positionless basketball. Bill Belichick, if he could have the opportunity, he would play positionless football on defense. And this is just one further step of getting there. A bunch of 4-3 guys that can go tackle anybody. That's what it seems to be what he enjoys. Absolutely. And that's going to take me, as now I'm the designated Packers draft, guys. We are back with the Packers here with their actual pick. And there's a little bit more on the board than what I initially anticipated. But I'm still going to keep it pretty simple here. I think there's going to take the best player on the board, and that's Devin Witherspoon, the corner out of Illinois. Arguably, cornerback 1, can play really well on the inside, can play on the outside, a little short, not as freaky as Gonzalez and Porter on the outside, but you could play him outside and be fine. Almost like you could play him just about anywhere. He's probably the best corner in the draft, just a little more physically limited, but still very good. You have Yair Alexander, you have Rasul Douglas, you already have good pieces on defense. Just fortifies it even more because you have these 2 picks. And I think at this point, we already know they're not taking a receiver in the first round. That is the Packer way we have learned as of recently. I don't think they're going to change that this year as well, too, because there's not. So give me Devin Witherspoon. Just add on to that defense a little more. Try and build a very well-rounded unit around the young Jordan Love.
Yeah, I definitely don't hate that pick at all. I will say it will throw a wrench into my future plans here as Devin Witherspoon goes off the board a little earlier than I was hoping he would. I was hoping he might sneak a couple picks down. But I love this pick. Devin Witherspoon, in a lot of ways, kind of 1B for me at corner. 1A obviously being Christian Gonzalez, who went off the board earlier. And then Joey Porter was a 2 for me. That's why it surprised me that Devin Witherspoon goes after Joey Porter. But I do really like this pick. I think for filling a need and filling a future need for the Packers long term, I think that solidifies this spot right here for sure. But that'll take us into pick number 16 already. We're already halfway through the draft now, ladies and gentlemen, as there are only 31 picks this year. So that's going to take us to the Commanders here at pick number 16. And what can I say that the Commanders need? Well, I know what they don't need, and that is a running back. So they don't need a running back. Well, you might need a quarterback. I don't know. Sam Howell. Are you comfortable with Sam Howell? Is there anything left in this draft at quarterback?
Jackson, they said so.
Yeah, are you comfortable with anything left in this draft at quarterback? Probably not. So you're like, all right, I'll rock with Sam Howell. Do you need a receiver? No, you got Scary Terry out there. You do have Curtis Samuel, who has played really well last year. You also have Jahan Dotson as well, who, I mean, talk about a talent. That's a young talent right there. Potentially could go get a tight end here. There are lots of tight ends in this draft that are a big fan favorite, but I do think it's too early for tight ends. And looking at the rest of their offense, well, there's just a whole lot of holes on that offensive line. You don't really need to look at their defense first. I don't think they're looking to fill a defensive hole, especially with any of the corners that are available here. So I'm going to go and slide actually into the offensive line. And look, if you look at tackle, top 4 tackles off the board already. But you look at guard, and there's a guy here out of Ohio State that I think snuck up a few boards. I know he snuck up my board for sure during the combine, and that's Luke Whippler. I think Luke Whippler here is the opportunity for the Commanders to get an interior offensive lineman, probably going to be more of a guard than a center. But I do think he is going to slide in there at a guard position, can help you out for 10, 15 years to come for now on. Team known for its pig-like fans, if you will. Sure love the interior offensive line. So Luke Whippler here might be the more questionable pick of all the picks so far in the draft. But I think this might be one that's going to just turn into a perennial pro. Like he's going to be a pro, and that's going to be it. Like you may not hear super big talents about him, may not see him in a Pro Bowl, but he's going to still be a starting pro offensive guard probably for the next 10 years.
It's the pick that will be questioned a lot. Like that was the sexy pick. But if Sam Howell does have that kind of game to him, that could be the reason the Commanders go to the playoffs next year. Kind of like when the Cowboys took Travis Frederick back in the day. It's like, really, a center at like pick 17 or 20 or whatever it was? What were you thinking? Then they go on a playoff run, and they've been basically elite running the ball ever since then with different backs and different, even after he left too. So I think this could be that type of pick as well too, where they have a lot of good players. It just didn't come together last year. If Sam Howell has that it factor, or if they bring in somebody else, this could be one of those picks that really catapults them. So I like that one a lot too. As a Cowboys fan, you probably don't as much, but that's now going to take us to pick number 17. And you know what? We have ourselves another trade to announce here as well too. But this one doesn't have to do with this current pick, but it's going to make sense here. We now have the Tennessee Titans. They're going to trade Derrick Henry, who has reportedly been being shopped in the offseason, to the Buffalo Bills for pick number 27. And I'm sure there'll be some other smaller things swapped around in there, but we're not going to get into that. So the Titans, while already on the clock, this is just a fair warning for what's to come earlier. We're going to see the Titans again, and the Bills have an absolute bulldozer in their backfield, and now they got Derrick Henry to go with him. So that is something to keep an eye on as well. But that's good. The reason we announced that now is because at 17, the Titans are going to take quite possibly the best player left on the board. They're going to take Bijan Robinson, the running back out of Texas. I think, as we mentioned earlier when they traded, they're clearly in all but a rebuild mode at this point. It feels like they are loading up. They're like, all right, we're going to suck this year, but we're going to have a talented team that maybe get one of those quarterbacks next year or something like that. Or maybe reload everything around with young players and Tannehill can carry us. I think they're just kind of stuck in no man's land and they've accepted it. Bring in Bijan Robinson. You got a stud running back for 5 years with it before you even have to pay it. And I think that gets Derrick Henry off the books. You save some money. It just kind of makes sense at this point. Might be a little bit early for Robinson, but I don't think they risk missing him later from somebody else popping up.
No, I like it. I love the pick. We talked about this when we did our top 10 in this draft class. Like Bijan Robinson is a top 10 guy without a doubt. Like easily top 10. Honestly, probably could make an argument for top 5 total talents in this draft. Maybe didn't have the best combine, but that's okay because we've seen what he can do on the field against all world talent. And he is still a stud. So I think this is probably an underrated pick. And again, this goes in this new trend of not taking running backs for in a first round or not giving up a first rounder. Well, we just saw the Buffalo Bills just willing to give up a first rounder for Derrick Henry, and then the Titans here now taking that pick and then getting a first round pick in Bijan Robinson in a running back. So maybe the trend might be flipping. Maybe we're just putting our wishful thinking into this draft. Who knows? But I do like this pick for sure for Bijan Robinson to Tennessee, a team that, look, we all know they love to run the ball. So you got to get the best running back if you're going to ship out the current king, if you will.
And that Bills backfield gets absolutely terrifying, especially in those goal-to-go and short yardage situations. Like, which one do we deal with? Because either way, it's going to hurt between Josh Allen and Derrick Henry. So that's going to be something to keep an eye out for as well. But all right, back on the Lions again. So it looks like I'm the designated Packers guy. You're the designated Lions guy. The way this is going right now is we're covering both of their picks.
Fitting considering how many times I picked the Lions as my island during 4th and 4 this last season. So it does make sense. But no, this Lions team. This is where I hope Devin Witherspoon fell down to. I didn't think he would actually make it. This was very wishful thinking that he gets down to 18 because they do need a DB. That's the one Achilles heel I think that really hurt them late last year was not having that other DB on the other side. But I don't think that's where they go here because of Devin Witherspoon being off the board. One of the positions they have a giant hole, a massive hole in is linebacker. And Dan Campbell loves his athletes, that's for sure. That's why he got Martinez. That's what they got Aiden Hutchinson for. They're athletes. So a guy that showed his athleticism in the combine and probably snuck up quite a few boards in the offseason and should continue to do so during his pro day. And maybe I'm biased here, but I'm going to go Owen Popo surprises everybody here as the first inside linebacker off the board. Yeah, that's the exact look I was hoping for.
When you got 2 first-round picks, you got a little bit more leeway, especially when one's in the top 6. So this will be definitely an interesting pick as well. That's definitely an interesting one. If he wants to put him in the build of like what we saw with Devin White and those type of guys, he has all the measurables to do something like that.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing: you break this down. If this was last year and Owen Popo came out in the draft last year, he's top two inside linebackers last year. Was always top 2 inside linebacker throughout his entire career. The reason why he fell between last year and this year, he had a wrist injury. Didn't play much at the end of last season. Comes in this season, doesn't really play much again because that wrist injury and then all the stuff going on around Auburn. Goes to the combine, shows absolute freakish nature here. And you take the way they love to play defense there in Detroit is kind of more of a dime system anyways, dime and nickel. You have 2 linebackers or you need an extra speed guy in there. And Martinez, while he's great, he's not as speedy as Owen Popo. So you get Owen Popo in this team, you start to solidify that defensive core. And next thing you know, who knows where Detroit might end up being. But they were already just missing the playoffs this year. I think adding a linebacker here is kind of where I go with this.
Throw a haul in that team in the later rounds as well, and you might find yourself as an official Detroit Lions fan at that point.
Hey, maybe I might already be. I don't know at this point in time. I don't even know what team I'm a fan of anymore.
That's a fair point as well, too. Just fan of all of it. But that's going to take us to number 19, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a team with holes across the board. Honestly, right now they have a lot of needs and they are in salary cap hell. Their secondary and their defense is going to take a hit. So we're going to look at the cornerback position and we're going to take Deonte Banks, the corner out of Maryland. Freakish athlete, highest rated corner left on the board. They probably weren't going to get those other guys, but they have too many holes to bother trading up for. They got a lot to build on. Rumors are looking at Baker Mayfield in the offseason, that they're really looking to bring him in to compete with Kyle Trask. So maybe that's the route they go offensively. And I think defensively, Jamel Dean's probably gone. Carlton Davis we'll see as well too. Like they're gonna have some holes in the secondary. So there's something to keep an eye out for as well. Plus they're getting old. They got really old really quick the last year. So I'm gonna say they take Deonte Banks just to fortify that secondary, which has already been leaky the last couple of years anyway, a la Cooper Kupp in the 4th quarter.
I respect that. I will say again, kind of. I know you have him as the highest rated left on your board. For me, I have a different highest rated left on my board for DB there at corner. So interesting to see him go off the board. But I don't, again, not hating it by any means whatsoever. I do like Deonte Banks. I do think he's going to be a great NFL corner. Just didn't test well, and I think that's just one of those things. Doesn't test the greatest in the world, but at the end of the day, you see it on tape. He's a fantastic player. So I do like this pick a lot. But that'll take us to number 20 here, and that's Seattle. Got lucky. They picked up Will Anderson earlier in this draft, and now you're like, oh, okay, well, what do I need to fill here? Maybe, and this is where I say, like, when they pick up an edge as early as they did, as lucky as they did, and as good as Will Anderson is, I mean, here at 20, you have the world is your oyster at this point in time. It really feels like. But I'm going to go that interior defensive line here as where is really where I'm going to focus at. And I'm going to go Brian Breesy out of Clemson. I think Brian Breesy here is kind of the guy that showed up during the combine more than anybody else there from Clemson. I think he was maybe the best show for Clemson defensive players during the combine. And outside of Jalen Carter, really, he was number 2. And really has been number 2 really his entire time going into this draft. But just really solidified himself number 2. And that's just because Jalen Carter is kind of a freak. So I have him kind of doubling down here on this interior defensive line. Just, you know what, let's just, instead of Legion of Boom, we're going to make a Legion of Doom, if you will, in the defensive line here. And just make it as deadly as possible. So going next to Shelby Harris, though, I'll have Brian Breesy.
All right, that's very interesting as well too. I think that not the first Clemson guy, not the one we expect to be the first Clemson guy off the board as well too. But you could have made a case that the Seahawks took the other one earlier, but instead getting Breesy here late at 20. So the defensive line they can use some fortifying on. I think Breesy will definitely help the interior a lot since they decided to go not take Carter earlier. Instead you have Breesy in the middle here. So I think that's a good fit for him as well. That's going to now take us to the Los Angeles Chargers. I initially was going to have them take Jalen Hyatt here, but the way our board fell, there's a little bit of something different looking there. And I'm going to have them take Zay Flowers, the receiver out of Boston College. Extreme route running. He has flown from an early second-round pick to a guaranteed almost top 20, all but guaranteed to be a top 20-ish pick right now is what it feels like they've been saying about him. 4'4", 140, clean route running, good size. The Chargers, they need somebody who can get open quickly in the slot. They need some speed to utilize Justin Herbert's arm. Zay Flowers has that and the ability to separate. His pro comp is Tyler Lockett. Did that with Justin Herbert's arm? Check, please. Double team Mike Williams, while suddenly Zay Flowers has 9 yards of separation on the backside. So Chargers are salivating at the opportunity to get arguably the best receiver in the draft here with Zay Flowers.
Yeah, no, love the pick, Zay Flowers. A guy that we talked about potentially coming out last year as a possibility there. Obviously chose to stay in for one more season and kind of really did his thing in the best ways possible. And so I definitely love the pick there. But again, not personally my top rated receiver, but I do love him as a top 2-3 guy. And for the Chargers, I think he's perfect for everything the Chargers need. But that'll take us here to 22 to those Baltimore Ravens who earlier, they went and got Will Levis. Now you need to throw the ball to somebody other than Rashad Bateman and Mark Andrews. Maybe you don't. Maybe you do. That's where I have them going there because you just saw Zay Flowers go off the board. I'm actually going to go here, and they're going to take Quentin Johnston out of TCU. I think they're just going to be like, you know what? Double down on the freak of natures out there. Let's just give Will Levis every opportunity. Do what we didn't do for Lamar at receiver. We're going to give Will Levis every opportunity for a quality receiver and give Mark Andrews a little bit of relief there. So I'm going to take Quentin Johnston here from TCU as the guy for Baltimore.
All right, good. You know what? That big, fast receiver on the outside, big, strong, rocket arm quarterback, elite tight end, Rashad Bateman, big, strong, fast, and can run clean routes. You might have a different type of. You have a very different looking offense next year in Baltimore than what we've seen the last few years. That's for sure. As athletic as Levis is, you're not going to do with him what you did with Lamar. Plus, Greg Roman's out. So curious to see how they're able to basically flip 180-degree flip things. If what we've talked about today does transpire as well, even if Lamar's still there, Quentin Johnston's a great pick. So it gives him a big body guy down the field that he hasn't really had. So this is a really good pick for them as well, especially if he's down this far as well. That's a really good pick. Next, we're going to check.
And it's just kind of the way our board shook out is, there's actually honestly a lot of receivers that could have gone here, but I just think that's the one that gives both either quarterback or maybe even, Pro Bowler Tyler Huntley the opportunity to have somebody to throw the ball to.
Well, we're probably going to see a run of those receivers coming up here shortly, but it's not going to start here at pick 23 as we are now talking with the Minnesota Vikings, who they have a lot of holes. They could definitely bring in a receiver to fill in for Adam Thielen, but I don't think that's their biggest need. What they really need is everything related to defense whatsoever. They have a lot of holes, and there's a lot of good players left, so I think they're going to go with someone who everyone wants to project in the top 10, but we both have him slip. I'm going to take Lucas Van Ness here, the edge out of Iowa. I think they're going to bring him in. Zadarius Smith's asking for his release. Danielle Hunter has been a little banged up. We'll see if they grant the release, but they need defense in abundance. You need to get after the passer. Lucas Van Ness is a stout run defender. Just makes sense. And he had a really good combine showing as well. So arguable top 15 players slipping down to 23. I think the Vikings will take this 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, I think that's an easy pick for a team that just they love their outside rushers. It feels like, and if look, depending on what happens with Zadarius, we'll have to wait and see. They obviously said early on, no, he's not going anywhere. However, we've seen that play out very many times, and it turns out to be completely something different. Like, you know, by 2 weeks later, by the draft time, it's like, oh, you know, instead, bye. Like, there's the door. See you later. So you have to wait and see. But I do love the pick, Van Ness, a guy that on a lot of boards is way ahead of where we had him slip here too. But I just think, again, this is kind of the way that the draft day shakes out. We always have that one guy that falls for no reason, and I think Van Ness might be that guy. So, but that'll take us here to pick number 24. And ladies and gentlemen, it would be the Jacksonville Jaguars. However, there is a trade. And I do feel like I do need to make a caveat to this because it is the Cowboys, and I'm the designated Cowboys fan on the show. Technically wasn't my idea for this trade, but I'll ride with it because I do like the idea of them trading up here, getting to pick number 24, and the Jaguars taking pick number 26. So that's going to put the Cowboys here on the board, and the Jags will slide down to that 26th pick. But the Cowboys moving up, and, you know, when this was originally presented, I love the idea because this is where we talked about receivers. They just fell. Like our receiving core, like everybody just fell down this board. So I have him coming up here and picking up Jackson Smith-Njigba here at number 24. And again, maybe I'm biased and gave Quentin Johnson to the Ravens so I can give JSN to the Cowboys. I don't know. I don't know how this worked out subconsciously, but JSN to the Cowboys. I think one of the best receivers in this draft class, maybe the best receiver in this draft class, but didn't see him play for a whole season. And for a lot of people, that does hamper them on their opinion, me included in Jackson Smith. I do think he slid just because he didn't play for a season. Granted, what he did at the Combine, stupid. Like, he looked fantastically smooth, fantastically efficient and athletic. And the last player that we saw didn't play for a year and get drafted in the first round, and Jamar Chase, well, let's just say he's a fantastic rookie as well. So we're going to go Jackson Smith-Njigba here to the Cowboys at pick number 24, which will take us to – What do you think about that?
If JSN runs a 4.3 like Jamar Chase did after all that time, I don't think he's going to make it this far. I think it is a wrap. I think if he runs a relatively good 40, you know what? I'll have to retract Zay Flowers getting taken early. I'll have to retract a lot of these picks if he runs like a 4.4 or better as well. So he's definitely a good pick here for the Cowboys and just gives them another weapon to get open opposite CeeDee Lamb as well. So that the reason I presented that trade in the first place was because they wanted to jump the New York Giants here at pick number 25, who are in a similar market. And you know what? They still get a guy that I think they might even have in a similar spot on the board. They're going to take the receiver out of USC, Jordan Addison. Smooth route running. Pretty good 40 time. Not great, but not bad as well. We were hoping for a little bit faster. Did get dinged up, so we didn't get to see him do the drills. But I just think very smooth, very athletic. We've seen him with Kenny Pickett and Caleb Williams. Just finds a way to be productive. And the Giants need playmakers on the outside. It can't just be Hodgins. It shouldn't honestly even be Hodgins whatsoever. But so I think they begin reloading that receiving core with their new $100 million man, Daniel Jones, back there. And why not get him somebody that can get open quick, fast, in a hurry like Jordan Addison?
Yeah, I like Jordan Addison. Again, if you guys watched our draft combine recap, you know that he was my loser from the draft combine. That's more down to his measurables. Just happens to be the way it is. I didn't think Jordan Addison should be number 2 on the wide receiver board. It's not number 1 on some people's board anyways. I do find him more of a number 4 or 5 guy, which, hey, nothing wrong with that. Let's just not forget he was Kenny Pickett's number 1 target at Pitt. And so he lit it up with Kenny Pickett. So I definitely love Jordan Addison. I didn't love him as much as I love some of the other guys that are up there for sure. But that'll take us to number 26. That is now the Jacksonville Jaguars taking over for the Cowboys here, as we just talked about their trade. And with the Jaguars, there's a lot of different holes here that need to be filled. I mean, they're almost there, right? Like that's how it feels. Like it feels like they could almost be there. And I'm going to go and dive into the SEC and dive back into that offensive line. And I'm going to go get a guard again, and I'm going to go get Osiris Torrance as that guy. I think Osiris Torrance out of Florida probably had one of the better showings in a lot of places, in a lot of people's opinions in the Combine, but for me, wasn't the number 1 guard there. But Osiris Torrance does have the capability. He's one of those guys that plays better than he looks in testing. So I'm going to go here, right here. Jacksonville goes and tries to save Trevor Lawrence even a little bit more than normal, trying to make sure he stays as pretty boy sunshine as they can make him, if you will. And, yeah, they're going to go get an offensive lineman here and get Osiris Torrance.
It's a very good pickup as well. So you can never have too much protection for your young franchise quarterback as well, too. That's going to now take us to our next pick at 27, which would be the Bills, but it is now the Titans, courtesy of a Derrick Henry trade as well. So we got the Titans back on the clock. And as we mentioned earlier, I feel like they're in the process of a complete retool, reload, rebuild, which means they're going to be looking at arguably the best players on the board. And someone who I don't think will slip just because of some of the weird comps he is getting. But he finds himself there. Mike Vrabel is going to sprint that cut up there. I like Kelcey, the interior defensive lineman out of Pittsburgh. Everyone's comparing him to Aaron Donald, freak athlete. Pair him next to Jeffrey Simmons as well, too. You know, Mike Vrabel's salivating at some of the defensive fronts and different stunts that he could pull off with those two as well. Jeffrey Simmons got to get paid next year. So if you don't pay him next year, you have an interior defensive lineman you feel comfortable with. So Titans grabbing Kelcey, who's arguably a top 15 player on a lot of people's boards, all the way down here with their second first-round pick. And there's a lot of good players left, so I think the Titans are just like, well, can't really go wrong here. We'll take that guy.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great pick there, for sure. It's hard because you when you compare him to a guy like Aaron Donald, that means there's a lot of expectations. But a lot of people forget Aaron Donald, his first couple years, wasn't really that dude. So if he can compare to early on Aaron Donald and just be an efficient defensive tackle and then develop into a better defensive tackle as he goes, I think that's perfect for the Titans. Plus, still you have Jeffrey Simmons right there, so you don't hate life right now with having a young talent next to Jeffrey Simmons. You feel pretty good about that. But that'll take us here to pick number 28, and that's those Cincinnati Bengals, the Bungles, whatever you want to call them, if you will. Losing a lot of pieces defensively this offseason. And sliding down the board for us, kind of surprisingly, I will say. I think some people might be a little surprised he's down here. Some people might not be. I don't know. I personally am kind of surprised he fell this far. And that's Emmanuel Forbes out of Mississippi State. I think this is where Emmanuel Forbes goes. I think Cincinnati, you need that DB. You need somebody that's going to be quick, be able to keep up with any sort of pacey receiver. And Emmanuel Forbes proved that he is actually a guy that can keep up with some pace here in the combine. So we'll see if he can turn that into performance on the field. And this is just another Mississippi State cornerback that goes in the first round. Hopefully this one pans out a little bit better than the last one in Minnesota. But we'll have to wait and see. But I do think Emmanuel Forbes, this is his opportunity right here in Cincinnati.
You can't go wrong with Cincinnati, just trying to get as much as you can on defense, especially the young rookie contracts, because there's a lot of money about to go into that offense between T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow. There's about 87% of your cap space, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So getting as many young contracts as you can on defense is the smart case here. That's how I would take us to pick number 29, and the team with the first-round pick, the New Orleans Saints. Who would have thought, right? They found them after all their trading of picks and all their manipulating the salary cap and all the weird stuff they do. They find themselves with a first-round pick with new quarterback Derek Carr. You got to keep Derek Carr protected. You want to keep him upright. So I'm going to give him tackle Anton Harrison out of Oklahoma. Some people have him in the top 20 overall players. Some people have him in the top 30. Either way, he's usually about a top 5-6 offensive lineman, offensive tackle. I think at this point, your defense, you're feeling pretty sound with. Offensively, you got some receivers. We'll see what happens with Alvin Kamara. But so, you know what? Just get an offensive line. Just fortify that offensive line a bit. You lost Tron Armstead last year. See if you can replace some of that production with Anton Harrison.
Yeah, I definitely don't mind this one at all. I think this is a good pick here. Anton Harrison, guy that slides in really my number 5 tackle. So it's kind of perfect that he goes right here, which is pretty much the number 5 tackle to New Orleans. So yeah, I definitely like it. And yeah, like you said, you missed that Teron Armstead position there. So you need to try to find somebody to fill that hole. And probably doesn't feel it right away, but you'll feel comfortable with it. At this point in time, Derek Carr's much happier than anybody named Alex Leatherwood being at right tackle. That's for sure. So,
and you get to put Penning inside at that point as well, too. Or potentially Penning goes left tackle and put Anton Harrison inside. It gives you a lot of versatile offensive line pieces to hopefully keep Derek Carr upright at a very, very mediocre division.
Exactly. Which will take us back to the second pick here for the runners-up in last year's Super Bowl. And again, I'm looking at defense with this team, and there's a lot of opportunity here. You could really go anywhere defensively, and it feels like they just kind of need to fill in positions. But I'm actually going to go safety, and I'm going to take a flyer here on this one. I'm gonna go Sidney Brown here, a guy who impressed a lot at the Senior Bowl. And if you look at the Eagles, how long can you rely on CJ Gardner-Johnson?
Well, he's hitting free agency, so they won't be relying on him a whole lot more.
There you go. You have an open hole, and you need to fill it in with somebody. Why not go right here? Obviously, you do have I cannot remember the guy that filled in for when Gardner-Johnson was injured, but you do have Sidney Brown there sitting there, who was, like I said, guy that impressed during the Senior Bowl week, guy that's impressed during the Combine. Maybe not the fastest, maybe not the most efficient, but he can play systems well, and he's very much just one of those guys that can play. Proved it at Illinois. One of the reasons why Illinois was such a good defensive team and had such a great turnaround the last couple of years. So I'm gonna go Sidney Brown here to the Philadelphia Eagles.
Very interesting, and very interesting as well. Especially this kind of shakes up the end of the draft board here for the Kansas City Chiefs, sitting here at number 31 as well. So there's a lot of different directions they could go here. There's a lot of really good players left on the board, but I'm going to stick with my initial thought process of them. I think they're going to go with a fellow championship winning team here. They're going to go to the Georgia Bulldogs, and just to piss people off, they're going to grab Darnell Washington, the tight end out of Georgia. 6'7", 260, runs a 4.6. Pair him opposite Travis Kelcey, those new jumbo formations they like to run a lot. Fade routes, jump balls, you give him the ball, and he sets the edge. He's the best run blocking tight end in the class by far. It's not even close. I know Dalton Kincaid's there, probably make a little more sense for their offense, but the back injury worries me a little bit. Michael Mayer, he's nice, but I mean, you already got Travis Kelce as a receiving tight end. Darnell Washington just gives you an extra offensive lineman, if you will, especially since Brown looks like he's going to be hitting free agency. And just that you have a garage door as your catch radius. You literally just have to hit the garage door and he's got it. So I think the Chiefs do something a little interesting there. Granted, we did leave some really good players on the board, such as Miles Murphy, Brian Branch, Kincaid, as we mentioned. There's a lot of good options for him here too. But I'm going to give him Washington just as another way to get freakishly easy touchdowns, which is what Kansas City seems to do. Is just, post up a 5'10" corner, easy.
Yeah, no, look, we talked about this before the draft that whatever the Chiefs decide to do is just kind of just like whipped cream, like topping on top. Like you're so happy with if you're the Chiefs and Darnell Washington sitting there, because you're exactly right. Not only is he a freakish athlete, but he blocks, and he blocks insanely well. And Travis Kelce is going to be like, yes, I have another tight end who can catch passes, but more importantly, can block for me, so I don't have to stay in there and block as much. While Travis Kelce claims on his podcast that he does love blocking, you can tell it's not his favorite.
He likes blocking safeties and corners. He likes exactly blocking.
He likes blocking those smaller guys, but Darnell Washington will block absolutely anybody. And if you saw him during the combine, you saw him push a sled with weight on it way easier than even offensive linemen were pushing it. Now, as that does wrap up our first round, DJ, I do want to talk about some of the players we left off the board. Who is your surprise that we left off the board in the first round?
I did just name a couple of them with Brian Branch and Miles Murphy. Those are the two that really stand out as well, too. I'm going to go with Brian Branch just because he has such a versatile skill set as a safety nickel corner type thing, almost similar to when Minkah Fitzpatrick came out. Obviously, he's not Minkah Fitzpatrick, but the way everyone likes to play positionless, especially the secondary versatility, I'll go with Brian Branch just because I feel like once the corners go, those top 3 or 4 corners, I think somebody will take a flyer on him as well, too. So I'm going to say Brian Branch is somebody who I'll be surprised if he slips out of that first round, but said the same thing about Trayvon Merritt a couple of years ago as well, and Javon Holland. First-round guys that might slip just due to quote-unquote positional value since they're not locked in at a specific position. But we'll go with Brian Branch for this one.
Brian Branch, okay. I definitely thought about him instead of Sidney Brown. I'll be honest, though. Our first 4 picks really threw off my entire draft plan for the teams that I had, just with it just ending up being quarterback. So that did kind of throw a loop in everything, because now there was a whole lot more available later on down the draft that kind of surprised me. And I got to say, Dalton Kincaid probably is my most surprising that neither one of us, really looked at. But I think we both have the same reason for leaving him off, which is that back injury. It was kind of a little bit terrifying. You're a little worried about that. But I'd also throw in Trenton Simpson, the inside linebacker out of Clemson. Kind of showed during a combine that he is a quality, inside linebacker. I just don't know. For me personally, I don't have him highly ranked, and I think the freakish nature of some of these other linebackers are what pushed him over the edge. So I think that's what pushed him back for me. But yeah, I think that those might be the 2 most surprising for me. Dalton Kincaid being the most surprising. Absolutely.
So that'll do it for mock draft number 1. We still got at least one more to go, as well as the big boards coming up later on as well too. NFL draft season is in full swing. It's always a fun time of the year. We appreciate y'all joining us. Leave it in the comment section. What did we get wrong? What did we get right? What was stupid? What was smart? And everything in between. We greatly appreciate you guys hanging out with us and listening to our first mock draft. We'll see you all again